Okay, sweet. Guys, welcome to the second edition of Product Hackers. Woo! Great to see everyone back. Last week's one was really good. I think the game plan that Seb and I have is kind of to have a session every couple of weeks, and it's kind of like a meetup slash podcast where we get industry leaders and tech leaders to come along, kind of share some opinions and ideas on some cool topics. Obviously, introducing AllSquares, a little bit of shameless promoting, but AllSquares, we're a tech recruitment company. We do a lot of work across product, delivery, engineering, design. I myself have an absolute love for product management. I think it's a fascinating space, and I'm really an advocate for it. And I want to run more meetups like this, and hopefully we can have some more stuff in person in the near future. That'd be awesome. But for now, I think it's virtual all the way. But yeah, I'm going to pass the baton on to Sav, our host, who's going to be introducing Product Hackers.
Cool, thanks, mate. Yeah, you say hopefully we can do this in person, but actually remotely, having it on a Friday at 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, you can, have your lunch and tune in. So
yeah,
I think it's sort of a good thing because you get a lot of drop-offs on meetups, and this way we can record it and people can watch it afterwards.
yeah.
As Sammy said, I know Sammy's quite passionate about product management. Likewise, that's probably why we get along so well. I started product school meetup like 18 months ago for this particular reason. I don't think there are very many books on product management, but I think the best way to learn is to actually share experiences from people in our community. And that's one of the main reasons that we started it. People often call this like learning 3.0. And I think I said this last time, like learning 1.0 is where the expert is a teacher and says what you have to learn. And then learning 2.0, they sort of encourage some dialogue. Learners ask questions, but experts define the answers. And then learning 3.0 is for this complex world that we live in. Learners are defining the questions and the answers, and we're learning from the different perspectives that we have and the different experiences that we share. And I think having this sort of forum really helps that. And I'm really passionate about the topic today as well. Selfishly, me and Sammy, when we plan, I just send him a list of topics because it's a topic that like I'll be working on with a client, and maybe I don't know all I need to know. And so selfishly, I'll put up a topic and we'll agree. And this topic is one that is, it can go in very many different directions, and it's about squad design. And squad design is very much about the context of your organization, which industry you play in, how big your organization is, how fast it's growing, what stage of growth you're in. You could cut a squad by feature, by mission, by product, by customer, by persona, by platform. There's probably other crazy ways that people do it as well. And you can have a BA and you can not have a BA, and you can have no testers. I've been in squads with no testers at all. And then I've been in squads where there are testers, and there's automation testing and performance testing, all of these sorts of things. So there's not one squad makeup that every organization can take on board. It's very different for each organization. So today we've got 3 awesome speakers from 3 different organizations, and also the thing that I really love is that we have Abby, who comes from a people and culture perspective as well, which is really super important. Initially, we're going to get Addy, who's from Bet Easy, to chat. I've worked with Addy before. Apart from wearing really nice shoes all the time, he also transforms engineering teams, and he works really well with ensuring that engineering teams have this mantra of continuous improvement. And that's what he's really going to talk about today. So I'll hand over to him first, and after that we'll have Abby, and I'll introduce her, and finally Jason, I'll introduce him before he chats. So over to you, Addy, mate. Go for it.
Awesome. Sorry,
Thanks,
just quickly, we'll get everyone to kind of turn off video, just like we said. And Addy, if you want to share your screen. Sweet. I'm going to put myself on mute now. All right, take it away, Addy.
Thanks, Sav. Thanks, Sam. Can you see my screen?
Yep. Can see your screen. All right.
Perfect. Let me just pull that into the presentation mode and take it way back. Cool. All right. So my topic for today, and I've chosen a very interesting one, transforming engineering teams into embracing CI. CI for most engineers would generally be continuous integration, which I think as engineering teams in the last couple of years, we've been doing really well. What we will discuss today are, I think, a few innovative ways that we've used both in my current role and in my past life to bring in a culture of continuous improvement, to basically get a mindset of CI. So without wasting time, let's jump into the next slide. Oops. All right, so since we have only 10 minutes, what I'll be doing is I'll not go into what CI is, so we'll not beat around the bush. What I've done is the audience for the talk, pretty much, I think it looks like it's mostly for engineers, but everyone from product managers, delivery leads, solution architects, anyone who works in the digital space should benefit from the talk today. The format of how we embrace CI today would be simple. So what I'll do is I'll state a problem that we're trying to solve, and we'll look at the why. So we'll add some context as to why were we doing this, and then we'll look into the how did we actually achieve the CI within that space. So since we have just 10 minutes, what I've done is I've picked 3 of my favorite problems, and we'll spend 2 minutes each on each of them. And then we'll move into a few sources of inspiration that can help us cultivate this habit continuously, so we can make this as part of our day-to-day routine. So let's moving on to the first one. All right, I think this is the one I love, and probably one that's closest to my heart. Organizational debt. So similar to tech debt, which you'd have heard a lot, is basically the accumulation of changes that leaders should have made, but they did not. And it's a classic one. So let's start with the why. If you work in any digital team, you'd have seen the engineering teams have this classic scenario where there's always a conflict between engineers and solution architects. So there's always this question of why does my architecture not match the solution design? Or there's a second scenario where you'd see, I've built this component, and these are all these new components which are now in production. So they've gone into BAU mode. Who owns these components, and who should be working when something goes wrong? And I think the last one is, and I've seen this in, again, a lot of companies, is as we grow, as the team scale, we go from the monoliths to the microservices architecture. We suddenly need the application catalog. It becomes more and more important. So these were pretty much the reasons why this particular problem has been highlighted as one of my favorites. Why we did this is, so what we did was we actually took the inspiration from the ThoughtWorks radar. So I'm guessing a lot of you guys must have already read what the ThoughtWorks radar did. So we basically created our own bespoke version of the radar. So similar quadrants. So we went from adopt, assess, trial, hold, basically the same thing. And the byproduct was we could then use them into our design review forums or any other ceremony that we have. Let me quickly jump into a snapshot. So here's a snapshot of the radar. So what this basically shows you is how we can bring everyone together. So how can we bring everyone on the same page across digital? So what this did was it increased the maturity of engineering practices that we had, the tools that we had, brought things closer to the business as well. So in a way, what it did, and I think a really cool thing that happened was people started also following the actual ThoughtWorks radar, which then brought a culture of knowing what the industry leaders across the world are doing and not just what Melbourne's doing. It also did start the business leaders looking into this, which meant they had a better buy-in in terms of when we were trying to sell a new way of doing things. I can go on and on about the radar, so we can actually talk about each of these quadrants for at least 30, 40 minutes, but I'll skip that part. If you look at what this radar has, it's mostly tools, but it has evolved over a period of time, and we now have more practices, the ways of working. So which then, I think what Sab was mentioning earlier, it then feeds into how the squads operate, what the team health looks like and stuff like that. So that was the first scenario. The second one being, and I think this one's again a pretty good one, is how do you measure your engineering team's performance? So if you've been in any engineering leadership forum, or you've just moved into a role where you've picked up the engineering leadership, the first question that you'd get asked is, how do I measure these teams? How do I see what they're doing? So basically, if you'd have asked this question before 2018, you'd get completely different answers from different parts and different people. But what happened in 2018 was the state of DevOps reports got released, and which then translated into a book called Accelerate. And what that did was it demonstrated the direct link between organizational performance and software delivery performance. So the researchers of this book determined that there's only 4 key metrics. And surprisingly, it sounds like there's just 4, but these 4 key metrics basically determined if your organization was a low, medium, or a high performer. So the question obviously is, what are these 4 key metrics? And if you Google, you'd see there's tons of information around this topic. So the 4 key metrics here were lead time, deployment frequency, mean time to restore, and change fail percentage. So those 4 key metrics, what we started doing, and I'll show you here a quick snapshot of one of the quarters. We just took exactly the same thing, and then we provided the ability for measuring how these 4 key metrics were used within the digital space. And then we also treated them as first-class citizens when it came to measuring the engineering health within the teams. So basically, this snapshot gives you an idea of where we stand, but pretty much if you can break this down by a feature team, what we call mission teams in our organization. So you can break it down by feature teams, and each of these feature teams will have a different view of where they stand within these 4 key metrics. So you can kind of make it like an ecosystem of how things are done. And if you can get these 4 things working well, it'll automatically make your teams having a better culture of CI, which would mean continuously improving things within the engineering space and practices. All right, so this is really cool. So the why in this case, I think, is really simple. So basically, there were different questions that continuously were being asked, and some of these questions were from large engineering teams. Some of them were more from leadership who focused on measuring and improving what mattered to them. So they had a different context. So some of the questions that people constantly wanted to know was, if I scale this team, what's going to happen? Did this new tool or new practice speed up the delivery within the team? So what was the ROI? What are the engineering wins within this team or within a sprint? What does a typical day of an engineer look within this mission team? Why is it so different from these other teams that are working on exactly the same work? So these are difficult questions to answer. Sometimes you not have context as companies grow, as the scale is higher. So you'll have a lot of engineers with different mindset, different ways of working, different tools. So suddenly this becomes a big question. So what we did was we used a tool called Git Prime. So it got acquired actually recently by Pluralsight, who then rebranded the tool to Flow. There are many tools in the market which do exactly the same thing. One of the other popular ones that I've heard of is Waydev. So I've marked that there. So you can research on that one as well. What is amazing about these tools is that they actually speak to the code. So they speak to what's happening within your repositories, within your CI pipelines, and it then spits out basically different kinds of dashboards and metrics that we want answers for. The good thing is you can slice and dice to whatever you're trying to figure out. So let me show you a few different snapshots here. So this is not one screen, it's actually a mix of a few different screens. And one of the favorite ones here for me is proficiency, which basically tells you what's the skill set within my mission team, or what are they actually exploring. So if you look at this, it clearly gives you an idea of what are the areas that my team needs upskilling in. So the good thing about this tool is because Pluralsight acquired it. So what it does is then translates this into a Pluralsight path, or basically it's a customized set of courses that people can then go through. And this then is more targeted upskilling within the team. So you're not only just worried about what the team's working on, but you're also helping them while they're working on different projects. You could look at other things here. So you could basically look at things like what are the repos that my teams are working on. So sometimes there's no context. So someone, and this is a classic thing you'd hear from a lot of people, where you'd have product people or people from other parts of the business come in and say, hey, can you quickly do this? And you'd be in the middle of a sprint and suddenly someone's working on something completely different. So you can get that view, which you would not get to see otherwise. So you can see exactly what percentage of time was spent by your teams within each of these different repos that your team's working on. Sometimes it also gives you good insights into, are my teams struggling? Is there a high churn rate in certain areas? So that is something which I think has been really helpful. Sorry, oops, the wrong way. Yeah, so that's actually been really helpful personally for me. And that's something that I have been really keen in looking at, because then that gives me an idea of, okay, there's a lot of churn, they're redoing a lot of work here. That means the coding practices or the dev practices or the engineering practices within the team are not that great. What can we do to help? So the other thing that you could probably see here is who are the actual senior engineers within the team, because it gives you a good view into who are the people who are collaborating, who are the people who are helping others, who are the people who are actually not just working within the team, but they're also working outside of their feature team. So those are answers you generally don't get to know unless you speak to every person, and which is kind of impossible as the scale of the teams grow. So the other good thing that I have seen from this is that you can set guardrails as to these are the practices that we have, and then match them to are they working. So for example, do we commit often? So everyone talks about you should commit small, you should commit a lot of times in a day. Those kind of questions can get answered here as well. So apart from that, are these commits well tested? Do we actually have good practices in terms of the commit messages that we put in? So basically, these are sensible defaults, like every team needs to follow them. But it's more, it ends up as a Confluence page somewhere where these are practices, but you can't really see if they're actually being implemented and if that is your culture within your organization. So this gives you that view, which is amazing. So that is something that I've been quite impressed with. And it's definitely helped us having that continuous improvement mindset when it comes to encouraging the teams to have the right practice. So I'll end that here for this one here, but basically you can slice and dice the data as you like. And depending on what you're trying to achieve, you can get different views of the same thing. Looks like I'm doing well for my time here. So moving on, like I said, that's pretty much those three things that I love, but there's a lot here. So what I'm trying to do here is put in a few things that are giving us inspirations in our day-to-day engineering practices. In today's fast moving and competitive world, the best way I think you can do for your what you could do for your products, your company, or your people is having a culture of experimentation and learning and continuously investing in these things as well. So not just in the technical sense, but also from a management capabilities point of view. So with that, so the first one obviously is the tech radar, which on your screen, you can see the technology radar is something that talks about the 4 key metrics as well. So apart from that, the feeds, so I'm a big believer in constantly reading and learning. So you'd see Feedly is something that I constantly would encourage people to have their feeds in one place where you can have everything in one view. A big thing for us has been comparing our stacks with other companies who are doing stuff which is similar, or even the industry leaders across the globe. And the good thing is this is global. So StackShare is really good in that space. So you could actually go and look at anyone's tech stack and the ways of working and why they chose what they chose. So those technical decisions then become a lot more easier. GitHub has a really cool feature called What's Trending. So that is something you can look at it in a day, what's trending, in a month, what's trending, what's been trending for the last quarter. So it depends on how you want to, what you're trying to do. And the last one, of course, are the engineering blogs. So it's a big plus because you see leadership talking there constantly. You'd see the best of technical advice there as well in terms of what you should be reading and following. So that's definitely the last thing that I would like to add. If you have more questions that go unanswered today, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. So you'd see I've put my LinkedIn in there, and I hope this session was useful in instigating at least a continuous improvement mindset, and hope we all continuously keep improving. Thank you. Over to you, Sammy.
Thanks, mate. Hey, can I just ask you one quick question?
Sure.
What was the tool that you mentioned there around, it had to do with Pluralsight, and it sort of gave you a map? What was that tool? Git something?
So it's Git Prime, but
Git
like
Prime.
I said, Pluralsight has acquired that tool and they've rebranded that to Flow. So you'd have to look for Flow. Okay, cool. I've got a couple of questions about that at the end when we do Q&A, but that was really awesome. Actually, particularly like the, sort of the gap analysis and trying to help engineers figure out like where they might need training and where they might be quite strong in some of their improvement areas. That's really, really insightful. I've never known about that tool, so definitely something I'm taking away from that. But I'll ask you more about that at the end. Yep, looking forward to it.
Thanks for that, mate. Next, we've got Abby, and Abby is from Redbubble, but she's got a really great background from Envato, car sales. She comes from a people and culture perspective. She's going to talk about squad design. I'm quite interested in this because I think that there's different people are suited for different stages of an organization, and sometimes you come in at the startup stage and you do really well, but when the organization grows, maybe you're not the right person then. And a lot of the people within people and culture have to formulate and discover plans on how to address some of these issues and keep the talent interested. So really, really interested to hear more from a people and culture perspective. So Abby, over to you. I can hear birds chirping.
Yes, and I was sitting here thinking, I wonder if the outdoors is going to bite me in the bum. We'll see how we go. And
hey, Abby. Sorry, I'm just a message to all attendees. Feel free to shoot questions through in the chat function, and Sav and I will grab a few of those questions and ask them during our Q&A at the end. Okay, thanks. Back to you, Abby.
Awesome. Just great, thank you. Confirming you can see my slides there?
Not just yet. Try.
It is coming. It looks like it's loading or something.
Let me know how that's looking. So I've got that on my screen here.
Nothing just yet. Sev, can you see anything?
I can't see anything at the moment. I don't know if you want to.
Sammy, I did actually share the slides with you in the instance that we would have
Yeah.
a technical speed bump. So
Okay.
let me know how you go.
Sure. I'll get that going on my end.
Thank you.
That's all right. Okay.
Oh, that's a bummer. We had done a test run and it seemed to be working. So my
Yeah,
apologies
it was
for the hold up.
working. That's okay. I'll just start sharing my screen on my end. Share screen.
Cool.
How's that?
Okay.
Can you see the slides that you want?
Let me just jump into that now.
I can see it. Looks good.
Yeah,
Yeah, awesome.
squad design in your organization. Yeah. Okay,
And
sweet. I'm gonna.
we'll just go with the classic next slide when
Yeah,
I'm ready
yeah. No worries.
to jump in. What a good start there. It's the classic people and culture person, you know, practicing and getting ready with the tech side and then falling short at the 11th hour. So my apologies there. So squad design in your organization from a people and culture lens. Before I get into it, firstly, thank you for the introduction. And I did just want to do a shout out to AllSquares. I love sort of the opportunities that are being created for like-minded, you know, people across the industry to get together and talk about things and knowledge share in this sort of forum. So thank you for asking me on to share some of my experiences and that people and culture lens on all things tech and product. Next slide, please, Sammy. So my focus today really is on the practical application of squads, specifically related to P&C. So again, a very strong people and culture lens. Sammy, have we lost those slides there?
Sammy, I think we've lost the slides.
Yeah, that's okay. I can keep talking to that while we
Yeah, sorry, I'll get that back up. There we go.
That's okay, while we bring them back up. So again, a really strong practical sort of lens in terms of P&C and all things squad related. I've tried to split it into two parts today. The first being a people and culture's role within an organization in a startup or scale up environment that might be introducing squads or has a well-established squad framework in place and is really wanting to look at best practice around upkeep. The second part is sharing some of my experiences with how I structured up a version of a squad in my own P&C team and some of the learnings that I had from that. Next slide, please, Sammy. So I wanted to just set the context first because I know when we talk about squads, and we've already mentioned whether it's startup, scale up, well-established organization, there are a range of different ways that people view squads. So it's my take, and to set the context for today, I'm looking at the squad framework from the point of view of it really deriving from an engineer-based team in startup and scale up environments, and they are cross-functional in nature with a strong focus on autonomy and velocity. That's really my take. For me, the squad concept has been around for quite some time, with Spotify and Netflix, you know, over the last decade sharing their versions of it, squads, chapters, tribes, you name it. For me and the experience that I've had with squads across organizations, they're usually comprised of people across the org, you know, whether that be project lead, delivery lead, engineer, analyst, tester, designer, you know, they'll come together and form that squad sort of piece. And of course, working towards that fortnightly sprint cadence where, you know, large chunks of the project are delivered in a very timely fashion. And having sponsors, leads and contributors in terms of that squad makeup. So for me, a sponsor being somebody that has a vested interest in the outcome of that squad, the lead being the person that's really the driving force behind that squad, and the contributors being those doing the day-to-day work. So with that context set, knowing that I am taking that people and culture lens and really applying this to a startup and scale up environment, let's jump to the next slide, please, Sammy. So people and culture's role in the organization with that squad setup and upkeep. Sammy, we'll go one more, please. It's my opinion that people and culture are best placed to play a role in squads, given their strong and in-depth understanding of a company as a whole, really relying on their strong relationships across the organization. They're often a really good sounding board, and even somebody that can play a bit of a devil's advocate, you know, when certain decisions are being made. I found that to be a really critical piece and offer a little bit of that impartiality at times. PNC can play a role as well in playing or providing advice and recommendations, specifically around national employment standards and employment law. Dare I say compliance? I know it's not a sexy word, but we are in the business of people, and again, whether we're establishing squads or we've got existing squads in place, we know that no two situations are ever the same. And we're also in a position to help garner endorsement from, you know, other members, whether it be board members or founders, all underpinned by key relationships, I think. Sammy, next slide. So whether, depending on the attendee list today, whether you're a people and culture professional yourself, or perhaps you're in another sort of industry or job function yourself, and you're in a startup or a scale up, in my experience, there are a number of things that we should be giving consideration to, discussing and planning for, again, because we are in the business of people. So with your squad setup, what guidelines, resources, and how-to information are you going to create? Are we talking about, you know, squad handbooks, squad playbooks? Are we wanting to house that on Confluence, or what is the consistent flow of information? And do we have a tone that resonates across other organizational guidelines and documentation that we're wanting to replicate in any of our playbooks or handbooks? What does our communication flow through look like? Do we have comm specialists in the business that can help us deliver the message of squads and communicate that to our team members? Do we have, you know, the initiators of the squad framework wanting to deliver that message? Is that somebody from people and culture, again, from an impartiality perspective, that can help best communicate those messages? And next point here, Sammy, if we could go back to the next slide, please. I was just going to talk to the decisions around how we nominate squad members for particular squads. So again, bringing that really strong people and culture lens, the classic, are we putting people together in a squad that don't get along, or do they get along? And how can people and culture act as a bit of a buffer there, or that person for escalation or resolution points? What do the balance of skill sets look like in your squad makeup? And how are you planning to assign the Rolls Royce of projects versus the lemons? You know, there have been a number of occasions over the years where you'll see particular squads, you know, given the lemon and having to deal with projects that perhaps aren't as sexy as the next one. What are the processes you're going to have in place to actually deal with that? Considerations around your rotation of people. Are you going to rotate people in and out of your existing squad, or are you going to keep the squad members the same and have a rotation of client and or project? Will you have exemptions? So for example, particular teams within your organization like design and marketing, are they going to sit separate to the squad framework? If you're an organization that has reward recognition, bonus or incentive type structures already in place, do you need to make tweaks to that to better complement a squad framework that you're implementing? Another bread and butter piece for people and culture really is around addressing pressure and providing support mechanisms. Anytime we're introducing a change process, something new, expectations, new team members, there can be added pressure, and not everyone deals with that the same. From a people and culture point of view, we're there to again provide support mechanisms and a bit of a buffer and guide our other team members and our leaders across the organization to being able to best support people in that situation. Also, another thing from my experience is around what do we do as squads when we have individual personnel taking extended periods of leave. So with that said, these are, again, from the point of view of people and culture, things that I would be expecting us to be partnering with the business on and considering, whether it be setup or upkeep of a squad framework, or if you are another industry professional thinking, how can I actually be getting some more value out of my people and culture team as I move towards a squad framework, or perhaps introduce some better practices to this. These are just some of the ways that I think you can do that. Next slide, please, Sammy. Okay, so now I just want to talk to my experience with applying a squad model specifically to one of my people and culture teams in-house. Next slide, please. So, for my people and culture team, we sort of pre-squad implementation had, if I talk through this example specifically, talent acquisition, working exclusively on talent acquisition projects. We had a candidate assessment funnel project that we wanted to deliver, and we just weren't getting to a point that we were particularly happy with. And some of the challenges that I had identified included working with a large global team, multiple time zones. I often had multiple projects with interdependencies, and all of our job functions were operating in silos. So again, talent acquisition, working exclusively on talent acquisition projects. I was seeing regular deprioritization, varied capabilities, and actually levels of interest in the projects that were going on, not to mention a lack of accountability. So I knew that there was an opportunity for a bit of a shake-up in terms of the classic way that we were just addressing project-based work across the people and culture team. Next slide, please. So, introduction of squads to people and culture. We went from, again with the example of the candidate assessment funnel, we went from having talent acquisition exclusively to a combination of other team members from across people and culture. In this particular example, I had assigned our talent acquisition specialist not only as the sponsor but the lead of the squad, and brought in a people and culture business partner and team coordinator to act as contributors on that project. And I got them working in 2-week sprint cycles. My overall sort of desired outcomes, or what I wanted to see in terms of improvement, really was based around shortened delivery times, an increase of communication and consistency, not only consistency, but quality of the outcomes that were being created, greater buy-in from our team members, improved engagement, as well as opportunities for development across people and culture. And I also wanted to take an opportunity to model work practices that were happening across the rest of our organization. And I think that's really important for people and culture professionals working within tech and digital organizations to not only have an understanding of the organization that you're partnering with, but also to be able to mirror and recreate some of those practices that you're seeing happening across the organization. Okay, next slide, thank you. So what we're seeing here is an example of a number of people and culture projects that I divided up by squads. So we had a performance system project that we wanted to deliver. We had an overhaul of our approach to workforce planning. We wanted to revisit our employer branding, and as mentioned a little earlier, we had a candidate assessment funnel that we wanted to tidy up. I've used Sally here as an example. Sally, as a talent acquisition specialist, is considered a subject matter expert in that space, so it made sense, and she does have a vested interest in the outcome of improving that candidate assessment funnel. With a lot of these projects, there are interdependencies, so there was a natural opportunity for Sally to be leading out the employer branding work, specifically because when we think about employer branding, that ultimately is our message and what we're speaking to in the broader community outside of the organization. It's the messaging, it's the why people might want to come and work with you. So there was a natural relationship between employer branding and those wanting to embark on the recruitment process and apply for positions within our organization. So again, it made sense for Sally to be lead on that position. She had also expressed interest in diversifying her skill set and getting some exposure to other areas of people and culture. So not only for an improvement to engagement for herself, but again, future growth and opportunities. I put her on as a contributor to the workforce planning project that we underwent. So I suppose I might say, by somewhat bastardizing the original squad-based model, I was able to bring together a number of projects that we had interdependencies on, better leverage our subject matter experts across each of those projects, and unify our team beyond their job silos. And again, talent acquisition being the example that we have used. So what were the results? Sammy, I'll get you to jump to the last slide, please. For me, the squad approach for my people and culture team resulted in shorter delivery times with increased quality, an increased level of collaboration, much stronger communication and transparency across the entire people and culture team. People were far more engaged and again, unified by what was happening. There was absolutely better utilization of our subject matter experts, and we had higher levels of things like accountability, autonomy, and engagement. So in summary, what I'd be saying, people and culture can and absolutely should be playing an active role in not only the establishment, but the upkeep of squads, really bringing that strong people lens to organizations as we partner with them. But also for people and culture professionals, maybe considering a bit of a shake-up of how your teams in-house operate. The squad framework for me absolutely helped us achieve successful project-based outcomes, not only reducing our delivery time, but increasing engagement and development opportunities for our team. Sammy, I think I had one more, which was a thank you, and that's all, folks. So I think that's it. Really looking forward to the Q&A part of today's conversation, and I hope that that's been somewhat insightful in terms of people and culture and how I view squads and how I've actually effectively used them myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. That was really awesome. I particularly like that you guys, tried it. We always talk about empathy and like actually trying sprints and 2-week cycles yourself within people and culture. It's really good. It would have given you an understanding of benefits and also downsides and all of those things, which is awesome.
Absolutely. And again, for me, it was really important in our industry, our people and culture business partners, our advisors are out there working with our engineering teams, our product teams, our design teams. It's important to not only understand it, but have had some real world experience with the application of work-based practices that the rest of the organization, is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And also now it's not just the weird product and tech guys standing up for 15 minutes, it's also PNC. And so now everyone's like...
Exactly. The product peeps are coming over and joining our stand-ups, hearing what's going on there. So, it works both ways in terms of that relationship building too.
That's awesome. Cool. Thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Next we got next we got Jason. And Jason has a great background. He's from Atlassian, EA Sports, but particularly interested in this topic because we've all been working from home for so long. So this is about remote working and structuring squads for remote working, which is going to be very, very insightful indeed. So over to you, mate.
Thank you, Sav and Sammy. Just checking if you can see my screen, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, okay, perfect. So I'm going to talk to you about creating effective remote product teams. I currently work at Atlassian, as Sav mentioned, and I'm a part of Atlassian's first Australian-based fully remote team. So apart from me, our designer, our engineering manager, and all the devs are located all across Australia. And as I've mentioned, in light of the current state of work today, where people are going remote, sometimes by choice and sometimes out of necessity, I'd like to provide some perspective about working remotely as a product manager and some tips that you could use to improve the effectiveness of your teams, be it remote or non-remote. So in terms of the agenda today, I'll talk through the process of setting up and onboarding a team, talk about what it takes to work well in a remote setting, again, from the perspective of product manager, and also how to integrate with a larger organization. Since we're a little bit behind on time, I'll try to keep things pretty high level, but I'll be happy to get into details in the Q&A if we do have time. So first is the team setup. And we start with the team's mission. When you think about going remote, it's very important to understand why we are going remote. Is it some sort of pilot, to roll out teams worldwide? Is it due to COVID that the organization is changing its strategy? You may want to attract talent from other cities. You may want a focused team working in a silo on some secret project which the organization doesn't know about. So whatever the purpose is, once you've identified your purpose, it's easy to focus on getting the right people in. For example, if it's a temporary situation, you probably do not want someone who will not be able to move to the office in future. In the case of our team, when we built the team, we over-indexed on senior professionals who were used to working autonomously because we wanted to really get started as quickly as possible and up and running. Now, once you've identified the right people, the next thing is really important to preserve knowledge and the culture. In our case, we were setting up a new team. So what we decided to do was to seed it with the existing Atlassian folk. And this was to transfer some of the knowledge about our products, the Atlassian way of working, and also bringing across the culture and the values, which is really important. Once the team was set up, the next part was about the onboarding. And it's really important to let a new team breathe without placing too much expectation on it straight away. And this is really important in the case of a remote team, because apart from delivering on business outcomes, you also need to let the team learn how to work remotely, learn how to pair on programming and drive product and design decisions, all while being remote and being unfamiliar. As part of my onboarding, I spent my first few weeks just understanding the product, going through customer interviews, and getting used to not seeing anyone in the office, maybe fighting a bit of loneliness and not having coffee runs. As part of our onboarding, the first thing we did was we ran an Atlassian team play called the Roles and Responsibilities play to identify what each person on the team would be responsible for. And the idea here is that you want to remove any assumptions about what a discipline may think is another discipline's role or responsibility. And I mentioned the word Atlassian play. I'll be talking about a few plays that we did. These plays are available as part of an Atlassian team playbook, and they're particularly useful for remote teams, even though they are applicable to all teams. They're available publicly and free, and I will share a link at the end of this talk. So the next thing is about how to operate effectively once you've set up the team. From the perspective of a product manager, you'd think that arguably the most important thing that a product manager should be doing is to build that shared understanding with your team and stakeholders. You want to really identify who your customers are, what their problems are, and also why it is important to solve these problems over the hundreds of other things that you can be doing. And this is the part which is easier said than done and takes a lot of time to actually build. And I'll talk about a few buckets where we can actually get this done. As a remote team, the first thing you want to do is to establish effective communication channels. Again, as part of the onboarding process, we ran another Atlassian play called the Rules of Engagement. And this is really important because as you're working remotely, you need to be aware of how people like to work, when they like to work, and also what other commitments they have during the day. So you can schedule meetings, around. In terms of the tools that we use, for example, we use Zoom with video always on. That's really important. And we use Slack for a lot of our non-meeting communications. Regarding two of the important parts for product management, one thing is brainstorming and whiteboarding, which is easy in the office with a bunch of people in a room. We use a tool called a mural where you can achieve a similar effect. It's not as good as a real thing, but it's close enough. The other important thing is to drive decisions and decision making. We use Confluence for long form documents where we can collaborate together. We also use yet another play called a DAISY, which is very useful when you want to drive high impact group decisions with input from multiple stakeholders. Apart from the communication channels, it's really important to develop team rituals. Like you need to get a sense of belonging as a team, build that trust, which is harder to do as a remote team. For example, we do something really small where every morning when you get in, everyone just says good morning on Slack. We also have these working sessions where, so what happens is every week we are doing our work, but we turn on Zoom in the background on video. So we kind of simulate the office environment with chatter going on and you just continue to do your work. There's no meeting per se. If you can see the picture, we have what is called as cupcakes, which is every time we ship something, we each get a small little treat. We talk about what we've got and we celebrate our success. We also run what's called a health monitor, and we try to do this every 1 quarter or so to check how the team is doing, figure out whether the team still knows what the mission is, whether they are happy, build upon the strengths, and also try to improve on the areas of opportunity. So apart from the communication and the team rituals, from a personal point of view, you'd probably want to balance work and life. And with remote working, it's starting with a clear demarcation of your physical and your digital spaces for work and life. I think I have, I'm pretty fortunate to have an office space with a door. So whenever I'm in the room and I shut the door, I'm at work, and whenever I'm outside, I'm out of work. But if you don't have that, there are other things you can do. I've heard of people, dressing up for work and then, dressing and then changing into home clothes just to get that mental space of, when you're at work and when you're not, using different laptops, for example. So those are some things you can do. Another important thing which comes to mind is about mindfulness. We often hear about people, checking work emails late at night or sending Slack messages at odd hours of the day. Well, the opposite is also true. In the sense, especially when you're working remotely at home, you look out the window and you see that, oh, the garden needs mowing, or the dishes have to be washed, or the laundry has to be done. It's really important to kind of focus and figure out when you're at work and set some time where you can do all those other activities, but not let that distract you from work. And another important thing is to get outside if you can. Like I should be doing this call like Abby from outside, but I try to get as much sunshine as I can just to make sure that I stay sane. So apart from that, so we talked about setting up teams, we spoke about operating effectively. The other piece is about integrating with a larger organization, especially if you're in a large company. You're probably working with multiple teams in various offices across the world. And as a remote team, you just want to be treated as another team. There's nothing really special about being remote. It's just another way of working. And I think Atlassian has been doing this for quite some time now. And they have some of the best practices. For example, we have offsites, or in our case, it's actually on-site. because we get to go regularly to the Sydney office to interact with the other teams in the product, as well as, you know, just catch up as a remote team ourselves and then do a few team building exercises. If you can see in the picture, we have these really life-size cardboard cutouts in the office. And what this does is it reminds the rest of the people that we are, you know, like that we exist and we are around. People have a lot of fun moving these cutouts to different places. I remember my cutout, which is the one on the right, was pointing at a hard to find meeting room for quite some time. Apart from the organization, though, it's also the people within the organization. And other teams go out of their way sometimes to make us feel, you know, part of the family. We have stand-ups and meetings which are really remote friendly. I've seen a laptop being passed, you know, around a table in a stand-up so I can see everyone as they're giving their update. Also, if there's a meeting and I'm the only remote person and everyone else is in the office because I'm talking to the product team, for example, what happens is sometimes people take calls from their individual desks so that it feels like everyone is, you know, dialing in from somewhere else. We've also done this thing where we started this new friends initiative where you are randomly paired with some person in the organization for an online coffee session. What this helps you do is to just make more friends, get to know more people within the organization, and more people know you as well. These are a few things that you can get with organization support. And that's what I wanted to share today. To summarize, basically you want to focus on onboarding and the team mission. You want to build a shared understanding with your team through effective communication, team rituals, and taking care of yourself, and also get the support of your organization and other non-remote colleagues. As mentioned, I have a link to the Atlassian team playbook, so please go ahead and check that out. And also, if you have any other questions about product management or remote working, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I hope you can take away some of these tips to make your teams better. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jason. That was awesome, mate. Hey, we don't have too much time, but we're going to do some Q&A, and I thought I'd start with you. And because we don't have too much time, I might make it 3 hard questions. So question 1 to Jason. If there was a remote team and they were given a problem, and there was another team all in one office and they were given a problem, who do you think would solve the problem in the best way? I'm not talking about fastest, I'm talking about more value to customer. Do you think the remote team could do it just as well as the co-located team? If so, why? If not, why not?
I think it depends on the nature of the problem, and it is a tough question to answer. I think depending on the nature of the problem, a well-functioning remote team who's been doing this for a long time and are used to all the practices can solve the problem as well as a co-located team. Where I think the problem, or it gets a little hard being remote, is when you have a lot of dependencies on other teams to help you solve that problem. And if those other teams are in the office, it's easier for a team which is co-located in the office to coordinate.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, it's one of those things at the moment, right? Like everyone is working from home. And so everyone is in the same situation. So I feel like everyone is more productive actually. But when some people are in the office, some people are at home, sometimes the people at home are at a disadvantage because they're not getting the context. And, you know, so I like that point that you said, like people, you know, jump on a phone when maybe you're not in the office. Yeah, definitely. Cool. We've got a question here as well from Danny to Abby. And it's about, it says that you've worked at both product companies and also digital agencies and consultancies. And in these consultancies, sometimes employees are on site with the client. And how do you make sure that they're still part of the parent company's culture? And how do you ensure that they continue to be engaged when, you know, they might spend weeks and months and sometimes years on a client site?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll talk to that from 2 points of view. The first is as a people and culture leader within those organizations, encouraging team members that are primarily based at HQ to hot desk or work remotely from those sites is a really good way to sort of flip that back, because often you can't have entire teams coming back to HQ for extended periods of time, but you can have individuals from HQ heading out there and sitting with the team and immersing themselves with the team. That's a really great and easy way to create some of that connectivity. From a company-wide initiative point of view, going with the classic back to base or a monthly all hands or all in is a really good way to do that. And that was something that I had introduced at a previous agency-based company that I was working with. So on a monthly basis, on a Friday afternoon, we would have everybody head out to a site. We'd put on some food, we'd put on some drinks, and we'd actually have each of the offsite squads presenting and providing updates to the company on the projects and the clients that they're working with. And that was actually a really good way to achieve that sense of connectivity. Are you on mute there?
Sorry, no, I'm not. So final question, and I might start with you on this, Addy, is just around, you know, we all talk about long running teams, like teams that are together forever and they, you know, bond and they get to know each other, and so they deliver better and they know their daughter's friend and all that sort of thing. Do people get bored in long running teams, especially engineers, Addy? Like, how do you believe in long running teams, for one? And two, like, how do you get them excited if they're sort of working on the same sort of problem area or feature or function?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's a common question as well, as to do we believe in long running teams, and should there even be long running teams? Because the nature of a lot of businesses these days is that we're continuously changing, evolving. There's new, and even from a leadership point of view, the leadership changes quite often, which means there's a lot of reshuffle within the teams. And I think in the last few years, what I've noticed is that's been happening a lot more. So teams, and that is where what I was talking about today becomes even more important. So you don't feel like you are in one team. If you're sitting in a team, like you'd hear things like, for example, when I talk to people and ask about how their experience has been when working for a certain organization, you'd hear different answers from different people. It's because each team ends up being like a company of its own. And that's not a good thing for the business. It's not good for, I think, any digital team anywhere. So that is something we're trying to change. And if you look at what I was presenting today, those areas bring teams together. So you're constantly having ceremonies like community of practice, your guilds, your catch-ups where you'd get the leadership together. So we're constantly throwing and bouncing ideas of each other, which then helps these teams, irrespective of whether they're long running or not, having exactly the same view and the same mindset. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Abby, do you have anything to add there from a PNC perspective? No? Cool.
Hey, sorry.
Go ahead. And Jace. Oh, sorry. Go, Sammy.
Yeah, I've got a question actually for all three of you. I'd love your take on this. But when it comes to designing sprints, especially on a remote basis, how do you keep track of that accountability? You know, every lead designer or every lead developer or your you know, talent acquisition, whatever it may be. But what's a nifty thing that might be unique in your team to keep that accountability during that sprint to see that it's successful? Let's go with Jason first, maybe. Jason, if you want to answer that first.
Just thinking about the best way to answer this. Like when we talk about shipping things, we focus on outcomes as opposed to just output. So to me, slipping on a sprint is less of a problem than shipping the wrong feature or something that customers don't really like. That being said, the people on our team, at least, and I can't speak for remote teams around the world, are really have a great work ethic, and they make sure that the work gets done as much as possible. But we understand that life comes in the way as well. So we focus more on the outcomes. Hope that answers it.
Sounds good.
I can jump in there. For us, one way that we've been particularly successful is through the use of tooling. So whether that be from a communication point of view, transparency point of view, and general updates. So if we are going to slip on those sprints, the collective team is well aware ahead of time if there are opportunities for others to jump on board and help or contribute to bring things back on track to ensure that we still can meet that sprint. That's really helpful as well. And with tooling through the use of, let's just say Trello, for example, we can jump on and see how things are tracking as well. So early communication for us, open transparency based on that tooling, and then all hands on deck if that's possible. It has been really helpful for us.
Yeah, I can second that. Like in terms of, for us, comms have been huge. So we've had more regular town halls than we used to in the past. So the frequency is a lot more. And because we don't have to really book meeting rooms, people can jump into conversations pretty easily. And that's happened a lot more. Also, to second what Jason was saying earlier, outcomes is what we're looking at. It's always the context. So even if you slip timelines, like GitPrime is a great tool that I was talking about earlier, but if you don't have the context, you'll not understand what the tool's trying to tell you. So it's always important as to why you see whatever you see in the dashboards make sense or not.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Sorry, there's just a couple questions here. So one was from Tobias. Hey, Tobias. So this one's to Abby. When you introduced squads, was it an immediate success, or what trial and error did you go through?
Good question. So I'll use the term sort of drip feed there. Initially, it was the introduction of the concept. There was then some back and forth in terms of conversation and buy-in from the team. So the team actually felt that they were contributing to the design or the squad framework that we were going to go with. From there, we actually then selected two smaller, lower impact projects that we would trial the squad and sprint-based model on. We then ran a couple of retros, got some feedback on how that process went, and then came together in our next town hall, I think it was, and collectively agreed on our implementation timeframe to roll that out across the rest of our projects and get squad members in over a period of time. So it certainly was sort of an iterative approach.
Awesome. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think that we've run out of time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to all of you for speaking. It was really insightful. We will be running this again in another couple of weeks, right, Sammy?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's the game plan. But yeah, really, really good second edition. It's all recorded, so we're going to get that up on YouTube, and I'll shoot that through to all attendees.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Enjoy your
everyone.
Friday.
Thank you.
Thanks. Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.